We are going to begin today on our 10-minute painting with a large square-headed brush and some titanium white paint. I'm beginning to apply it horizontally at the base of our landscape, and then I'm going to take a mixture of that titanium white and primary blue and apply it around the titanium white that we just initially applied. I'm going to blend the two together very softly with a very light touch. By incorporating a light touch between these two pigments, you'll ensure that it won't be streaky. You get a very smooth transition from one to the other. From there, I'm going to take more of a pure primary blue. This one doesn't have as much white mixed in, and I'm going to line the edges of the sky with it. This is simply going to create more of a gradient from that white in the bottom center out towards a darker blue. It's going to create an implied vignette, and it's going to ensure that the eye kind of stays in the center of the painting, as the human eye will innately be attracted to the brightest portion of the painting and stay there. Now I'm going to take a medium-sized square-headed brush and begin to map in a couple of mountains. Now the neutral gray that we're making here is a mixture between Mars Black and Titanium White, starting off with a very light application initially, and then I'm going in with a slightly darker version of the gray and just creating some detail, ensuring that it looks three-dimensional and that we have pathways moving up it. You just want to ensure that one side is generally a little bit darker than the other, that the two mountains don't look the exact same, that they aren't simply triangles. Just ensure that you're creating diversity within your mountains and all of that. Now I'm taking a medium-sized round-headed brush and beginning to implement fog. I did so initially with a little bit of gray, but now I'm going to incorporate a lighter version of that as well. You want this to be soft, wispy, and move your brush in a circular motion. Now I'm going to take a very old square-headed brush, one where the bristles kind of leaf off in varying directions, and in a tapping motion apply some very desaturated green. We mixed this green with primary blue, primary yellow, and a good amount of titanium white. Now I'm going to apply more additional trees and foliage. I'm blending it slightly into the other using a tapping effect, and this has less white in it, so it's going to be a little more saturated and a little bit darker. The idea is that as you get farther into the background, everything gets slightly less saturated. As you get farther into the foreground, everything gets more saturated and a little bit more stark. This is how we're going to build depth and ensure that we have a painting that looks like it's really three-dimensional. From there, I'm going to apply even darker trees in the foreground, this time incorporating a little bit of Mars Black into that initial green mixture, and again doing this all in a tapping motion. We're slightly overlaying it on the layer we just did, and we're just ensuring that we get this very natural progression that goes from this stark color at the front of our canvas to a lighter version in the back. Then I'm taking a very small square-headed brush and incorporating a couple of other very small trees. As they move towards the back of the painting, they will get smaller and smaller, as that is how perspective works. And if you're having issues getting a very clean look with them, if it's a little too toothy, just add more water and it will be so much easier to manage. Now I'm going to take some blue, primary blue with titanium white, and apply that to the base of my painting in horizontal strokes. I'm picking up paint from portions of the trees just to ensure that we get a very natural reflection in the water. This is a very easy way of creating reflections. Just grab the paint that you previously applied and move it horizontally into the water, as you can see. And there's even a dividing line where the water ends and the foliage begins. So it's a really nice effect. I'm then going to take more additional green, apply that both into the water and into the previously applied foliage. We're doing this because portions of the water will reflect this very glassy aesthetic, and so you'll still see that texture in the reflection. And when we moved horizontally, we kind of lost a lot of that. So we're just reincorporating it, and we're also incorporating it into the foliage because, of course, we want to ensure that the painting remains cohesive and that what's going on in the reflection is also accurately going on in the foliage itself. in that which is reflecting upon it. So just keep that in mind when you're working on that little area as well. Now I'm just applying that same dark pigment to the right side of the painting and ensuring that depth exists on both sides. Now I'm using my larger square-headed brush and some titanium white paint and applying some highlights to the center of our lake. I'm doing this in horizontal strokes as we did before, and as we move into the background it dissipates until it's almost unrecognizable, with the detail remaining in the foreground. As things get farther back in a painting, they should be less saturated and more implied. So you'll lose varying details, and that's important because that will create depth. Not every portion of the painting should look highly detailed. Now I'm taking a small square-headed brush and creating a division between our water and our land. This is the water just kind of rushing up against the land, creating a little bit of movement and a little bit of a reflection. It's a nice little detail, just ensure that it dissipates as it moves into the background of the painting. Now we're going to take a small round-headed brush and begin working on our branches. Here I'm using a burnt umber and a little bit of Mars black to darken it. I'm beginning with a good amount of water on my brush because I want to ensure that my application isn't grainy. I want it to be smooth and I want to make it with fine marks. So the more water you incorporate, generally, the finer the application, the more detail you can incorporate. It will thin your paint, however, it's certainly worth it. Doing the additional layers is 100% worth getting those fine little lines. When I'm running out of paint, as I move down towards the bottom and base of the painting, I can press harder with my brush. It will expand the bristles and we'll get a larger application. So start at the top of your branches with a very soft application. Then as you move downwards, you can press the brush inwards more. It'll create a larger one and you'll get more of that natural progression from a very small top of a branch to a very large base and tree trunk. So here we're just continuing to put on more of that brown, more of that Mars black, and ensuring that you have a good base. With that said, don't worry if you mess up on portions of those branches because you can always cover them with foliage as we're doing here. I'm applying the foliage in the same way that I did the trees before in a tapping motion with a very dark green. The green is similar to the dark greens that we've used before, and it might even be a little bit darker because this tree really is at the foreground, at the forefront of our painting. I'm ensuring that I have dense clusters of leaves and then I have some that are kind of more open and loose. Ensure that you have clusters, varying areas that are more dense than others, and as we get towards the outskirts of these clusters, make it fade out a little bit. Make it a little more transparent, a little bit more see-through. Then we're going to take a lighter green and we're going to apply highlights to varying areas of our darks. This is the light catching them, and it's going to imply that the light is really grabbing on, and you're going to get this great stark contrast because you have the real darks and you're going to have real lights. It's really going to capture the viewer's eye and keep it there. Then I'm doing the same thing with my tree, but I'm applying these highlights predominantly to the edges of my clusters and tapping them inwards. As we get towards the real inner portions, it's going to completely dissipate and we're going to be left with those darker colors that we initially applied, but the edges are going to be these brighter areas that are really catching a lot of light. A lot of light is sinking into them and through them, and it's really going to be this beautiful contrast from one to the other. This is done best with multiple layers. Maybe you want to let it dry and you can come back, that way it doesn't blend so much. But the idea is that we're just building layer on layer on layer, ensuring that the areas that should be catching light are catching a lot of it, and the areas that should be dark remain fairly dark. So there we have it. I think we're doing a great job here. We're just doing more applications, more light in these varying areas. But you really want to save the brightest highlights for the areas where you really want the viewer's attention to be, such as the main portions of the tree. With all of that being said, there is our final 10-minute painting. We did a lot in this one. It was a lot of fun, and if you are new to acrylic painting, you'd like to learn more, there is a link in the description to my ebook, Acrylics for Beginners. And of course, I post every Saturday. I hope to see you next Saturday. Thank you so much for watching, and above all, stay creative.